You remember back in the day where like talk shows would like
Yeah,
have like really bad teenagers and they
right.
would send them off to those boot camps in like Texas and like the random place in Utah. So
Yeah.
I worked in one of those places in Texas and loved it. So these girls were like cutters, they were prostitutes, they were drug addicts, and they were all under 23. And I absolutely loved working at this boot camp. So I'm like 25, 26 years old, driving on this to this like horse farm of like a wonderful kind of boot camp. It's like, oh Tasha, can you help me with? And I'm gonna make up the name Samantha. Can you help me with Samantha? She just ran out of my office. I really think she was triggered. And she was like, and I was like, oh wow, which way did she go? And there was like a forest, and it was just this girl could have gone anywhere because she was triggered in a session with the psychologist, and now the psychologist is asking me to go and find the girl.
Welcome to the Dreams by Any Means Motivation Station. I'm your host, Ed Doxson. Today I have a very special guest here on the show. I think this is a guest that everyone, literally everyone that listens to the podcast can benefit from, whether they are already interested in this field or not interested in this field. And when I say interested, just interested in some of the great benefits that can come from this, and specifically in the African-American community. And that's talking about therapy. We have Dr. LaTasha Russell Harris, who is a social scientist, racial justice consultant, doctor of clinical psychology of the Association of Black Psychologists, and president of the South Florida chapter. And that's just a few to name. But welcome to Dreams by Any Means, Dr. Tasha.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely, absolutely. Glad for you to be here today. So before we jump into all the amazing things that you're doing in the field, as far as around therapy, psychology, helping people get their mind right, helping address mental health, racial inequities, and those type of things. Let's just start off and talk about you and where you're from. So you're originally from Ann Arbor, Michigan, correct?
Oh yes, yes, yes. I am a Midwesterner. I moved to Atlanta at 17 after graduating from high school, and then I actually after graduating from Spelman in Atlanta, I then moved to Houston, Texas, became a teacher, then a principal, and then I decided to start this entire field in mental health, and ended up in Berkeley, California, in the Bay. And then I just moved here in South Florida in 2014. I can't say just anymore, huh?
Right.
When it's 9 years, you got to say I live here. Okay, I live
Yeah,
here.
yeah, nice. So, something you just mentioned before we get past this. So, going from Ann Arbor, correct me if I'm wrong. Ann Arbor and Atlanta, those are two different type of makeup of cities, correct?
Oh, it's true. I wanted to be around progressive Black folks. That's just
Yeah,
the exact truth. I
yeah,
was tired of the only nice cars, like the drug dealers' cars. Why is always the neighborhood that's the good neighborhood is always the white neighborhood? I wanted to go to places where a nice neighborhood could be all Black, which is why I loved places like Houston and Atlanta. There are lots of places around the country, but there's only a few where we really are running some things.
right, right. Agreed. And Ann Arbor is more kind of a college town as well, right?
Yeah, for sure. University of Michigan. I mean, it was a great city where I learned a lot of diversity. I can't take that away. I grew up around a lot of Arabs, a lot of Persians, a lot of Middle Eastern, which is not a normal population that a lot of folks are around. I grew up around a lot of Asian Americans, and Black and white. It's kind of interesting. I ended up learning Spanish, wanting to have my major in college, Spanish, but I was never really around a lot of Latinos.
Yeah.
It was something that was new for me. I was like, oh wow, all these people are coming to America that speak Spanish. Who's gonna talk to them? So that's
Right,
why I
right.
picked my major.
Got you. Now, when you got to Spelman, coming from Ann Arbor, and not even just being in a city like Atlanta, but also attending a prestigious school, how was that transition, from Ann Arbor to Spelman? Was Spelman always on your list? Was it something that, family members went there, or this is a school that you just
Oh,
decided?
that's a good question. So my
Yeah.
parents met at North Carolina A&T. So the HBCU thing was around, but my
Okay.
mom was actually surprised because I wasn't a very like bougie kid. I wasn't a very girly girl,
Yeah.
and so she was like, "You're gonna go to Spelman because of the way that Spelman women were always thought of." And so I loved going. You go to those historically Black college tours when you're in high school in 10th grade. Parents, make sure you take your child. You'd be surprised. It could change the trajectory of their life. But I went on like a college tour, the Black college tour in 10th grade. And I really liked Spelman. I thought it was so cool to be around other women that were just like me, that like, might have been the president of their high school, captain of their track team, and like really wanted to do well in school and didn't always want to talk about boys and wanted to get good grades. I was like around people that were just like me. It was the best decision I ever made in my entire life, was going to
Nice.
Spelman.
Nice, nice, nice. And so you were Spanish and pre-med major, correct?
Oh yeah, so random, right? I literally was like, I think I want to be a bilingual doctor, which I am. I just decided to do doctor of clinical psychology instead of medical doctor.
Okay, okay, nice. Now, I want to not just ponder too much on this question, but when we talk about the podcast, we talk about networking, we talk about location, getting out your comfort zone. So I know you mentioned get into that city where you wanted to be around more Black people doing positive things, having that Black circle, that network. When you got to Atlanta, and I'm asking this because I know a lot of people that listen to my friends. They transition to different cities. Some have good experiences, some have bad experiences. When you got to Atlanta, did you feel like the connectivity immediately, or did it take you a while to kind of get into that space and get acclimated with the Atlanta community?
Oh, this is a good question. So the truth is, pretty much every city the first two cities that I moved to after high school, Atlanta and Houston, were very welcoming. The beautiful thing was when you're a Black progressive person and another Black progressive person sees you, we see each other, and so no, there's no competition. I absolutely thought it was more interesting to see that people were not down to earth. I remember that. I was like, oh wow, she's like the what was it, like the mayor's daughter or the senator's daughter, was like, I was in class with them and I saw the entitlement. But I
Yeah.
also found my type of girls who actually had work studies and where I was a waitress at Outback Steakhouse. Like we was working our butts off, and still doing well and still going to the club, you know what I mean? And
Right.
maybe still kicked it. But it was like after we finished our after going to the library, for the maybe a couple hours after classes. So for me, I think you just need to find your people, but believe that they're out there. I do think that only comes from when you know yourself. So a lot of people
Right.
get caught up because they're followers and they're still trying to prove themselves and hope that people like them. But you'd be surprised when you are like have a strong sense of self. People will be drawn to that, which will be other strong people that also have a strong sense of self. So Atlanta and Houston were great cities. It was the Bay Area and Florida. Los Angeles, I appreciated, but the Bay Area, Oakland, San Francisco, and South Florida, oh no, that's a whole nother conversation.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
was definitely not embraced there. In the
And
Bay,
what
it was
part of
like
the Bay
even.
were you in?
I lived in San Leandro, which is like the Oakland side,
Okay.
and my school was in Berkeley, which is also the Oakland side. When you live in the Bay, there's like the east side of the bridge, and then the west side of the bridge, which is the San Francisco side.
Got it.
And yeah, that was the most racist time of my life. I was 29 to 33 and hated it.
Wow, wow, okay.
Absolutely. Yeah, I don't apologize for other people's, illiteracies, racial illiteracies.
Right. Right, right. And okay, so when you left Atlanta, went to Houston to become a teacher, math teacher, correct?
Yeah, fifth grade math and seventh grade Spanish.
All right. And now fifth grade math, seventh grade Spanish. But then you also became a principal at 24. So how was that? I know a lot of friends in education, but I don't think I've ever met a principal that young.
Well, let me tell you. So I've been crazy a long time. I like to tell people that a long time, right? And so the thing I have to acknowledge is my mom was a principal my whole life, middle school and high school. And my father was like a process leader at Ford Motor Company in Detroit. And so I come from leaders. Let me start there, right? So leading was very normal, but not bossy, because you got to learn how to be a leader and not always be bossy. You got to learn how to do both. But the truth is, it was just natural for me. This is what happened. I was a lead. Was I in seventh grade Spanish? But I'm like 23 years old, and I'm leading this like parent teacher, student, like big old like conference in the gym, and we're
Okay.
talking about something, and I'm speaking in English, and then I'm translating it to Spanish, and I have the demand of the entire gymnasium. And a superintendent walked up to me and said, I want you to be the principal of one of my schools. She couldn't believe this 23-year-old had the attention of maybe, I don't know, 1,500 people that were Latinos, blacks, and whites, and Asian, more Vietnamese kids and their parents. She couldn't believe it. Like, who is this young thing that's yeah? And
Right.
so I literally learned becoming a principal, because I was like, all right, well, let me see. I learned there that I rather actually counsel than to sit up in boardrooms, attendance, buses, and field trips. Like, I actually didn't like it at all. I had
Yeah.
the ability to be an administrator, but I don't really like to meet just to meet. I like to really I
Right.
like
To
to be
impact.
effective. Yeah, yeah. It wasn't enough for me. That title didn't do nothing for my
Now
life. I
you,
left.
yeah. Yeah, no, and I'm sorry to cut you off because I want to just ask this because I think this is important. Do you feel like in that field, education, just in service of gene, do you feel like the higher you go up it kind of like it's harder to really serve and connect with the main focus, which is the
I
people.
do. I do. I
Yeah.
actually hated it. I really did. I'm telling you, the superintendent and I can't stand this lady. Did you
Yeah.
understand? Her name is Mrs. Clough. Okay. I say it out loud every time people ask me. This
Yeah.
woman who was an elder in her 50s, probably at the time, this was 2003 or four. And she was going to talk to this 24-year-old, like young woman that's like clearly, trying her best as a leader and a principal of one of her schools. And she literally basically said, "You have too much integrity to work for me." And I
Wow.
said, "You sure right, because I don't cut corners. I don't want to run a school like a business." And so that was like the beginning of, there's some times where you get that question asked in interviews of, when you see something wrong, will you say something, even if you're, wanting to keep your job? And I'm the one that, yeah, I'm gonna say something. I don't want to stand in like places where integrity is not the norm. And if it comes down from the leaders, I'm good. I don't want to be one of them. And so it
Yeah.
was nice to make maybe $70,000 or $80,000 at 24 years old. But I immediately left, and Hurricane Katrina hit New Orleans, and I went to go work for FEMA. That was the beginning of me knowing how well I work in crisis. So all of
Right.
that kind of, how they say all things work together for the good. So it was a
Yeah.
blessing that I couldn't stand being a principal for me to then work for FEMA and leave without any guilt.
Yeah, yeah, no, no, great stuff. Okay, so after leaving that, let's dive right into this therapy. Where did that come from? How did you get into the therapy lane? What was the moment where you was like, "This is my purpose. This is my calling"?
Oh, that's a good question. So I have a really good friend who's her name's Dr. Akeisha Jones, and she heard someone on the radio, like a Dr. Phil or Dr. Ruth, and she said she called me immediately while I'm in Houston. She was living in Atlanta, and she was like, "Tosh, this is what you should be doing. You should be a psychologist. This is how you talk. This is how you walk. Like, this is you. Like, you are this all day." And I was like, "You think so?" And so from there, I started then working in like a field, which is like the mental health field. You remember back in the day where like talk shows would like
Yeah,
have like really bad teenagers, and they
right.
would send them off to those boot camps in like Texas and like the random place in Utah. So
Yep.
I worked in one of those places in Texas and loved it. So these girls were like cutters, they were prostitutes, they were drug addicts, and they were all under 23. And I absolutely loved working at this boot camp. So I'm like 25, 26 years old, driving on this to this like horse farm of like a wonderful kind of boot camp. It's like, "Oh, Tasha, can you help me with?" And I'm gonna make up the name Samantha. Can you help me with Samantha? She just ran out of my office. I really think she was triggered. And she was like, and I was like, "Oh wow, which way did she go?" And there was like a forest, and it was just, this girl could have gone anywhere because she was triggered in a session with the psychologist, and now the psychologist is asking me to go and find the girl because I
Oh
was like
wow.
the rehab counselor. So this woman who is making, and I quote, three times my salary. I'm making $30,000, right? 2 weeks. See, I like to talk about money. People don't like to talk about things like this. I like to be specific. I'm making thirty
Yeah.
thousand dollars a year. She's making 90, probably, and she asking me to talk to her patient who walked out of her office. She literally says, and I quote, "You're the only one that can really get through to these girls."
Oh wow.
First of all, let me get your degree, right? I need your salary and I
Yeah.
need your degree. So at that moment, I then applied to see what did I need to do to become a doctor of clinical psychology or a psychologist, and it was to take the GRE. I'm literally like 27 years old, and I started my grad school at 29. So it was like my second career, because the first one was in education. But it was the best thing I could have ever done after going to Spelman, was becoming this degree, even though it was the hardest degree I've ever gotten in my life.
Yeah. Yeah. Because if I'm not mistaken, I was reading you went back to school after 12 years, right?
Yeah, 12 years. You got a good memory. Yeah, like
Yeah.
I'm literally like doing just fine. I was making, with FEMA, I was making $10,000 a month, chasing hurricanes and earthquakes and working with people that are devastated, which sounds like, wow, she's a little weird. Yeah, I am. I like really like bringing that, like alleviating suffering or pain, whatever I'm able to do in the healing profession. And
Right.
I was, it, for whatever reason, it was a gift. And I had never really worked it like that. And then I just learned how to make, a living off of what I believe was a God has gifted me to do.
Yeah, yeah, no, absolutely. And now through this therapy lane, as I was saying in the beginning, we know, I think now, in the Black community today, it's growing, it's more accessible, people are talking about it more. But when you first got into the lane, what was your experience of trying to really, I would say, encourage and influence the African American community to really take more advantage of their mental health?
That's a good question. And so I've been in it since '06. So
Okay.
this is 17 years later. But I'm gonna try to give you a little something. And I just did, I mean like just did a session at a black church
Okay.
in Coral Gables, which was wonderful. I was received by them. The age in the room of the congregation was like probably between 30 and like 80 years old. And I remember in the beginning, I felt like I had to prove myself, right? So I had to explain what my credentials were, that that just so like I'm almost like needing to be received versus just being myself and knowing that they will receive me. So I remember that was a big thing. Sometimes it's hard for elders to listen to someone that's younger than them to tell them about how they can get to a healing profession. And then I learned when you're effective, it don't really matter about your age, that
Yeah.
people will listen to you. But that was the beginning of it. I remember even that the things that I would say out loud, I would say things like, you guys, post-traumatic slave syndrome is real. Dr. Joy DeGruy, that book, I don't know if you've ever read it. It's real. We were really taught to shut up and take it. So we can either
Hmm.
continue to shut up and take it, like the little girl being raped in the back house by Massa, and just know that he gets to do what he wants to do with your daughter, and we don't say nothing, and we could continue to just say nothing, even though we're suffering through the norm, or we could actually start talking out loud and say, "I'm pissed off. I'm mad. I'm sad, and I'm hurt." I avoid people. I am the way I think of the world is pretty tainted. You know what I mean? Like I don't come outside. I literally don't know how to make friends. Like all those different things can come from the PTSD, from literally your like emotional safety just snatched from you. And that's
Yeah.
historical. So it makes sense that from where we come from, that we don't think we need to talk to anybody. To talk to were white males or white women. So don't feel safe in a room as black, whatever we can call them, Sally, Matthew. You know what I mean? When we really want to talk
Yeah.
to a Keisha and a David, and it's like,
Yeah. Yeah.
no, you now we look like that. So now what's your excuse?
Right.
Anybody that is always still thinking of, I don't know if I want to do it. I'm like, just try it. Because my favorite thing is when people come to my couch or when we talk over Zoom for the first time, they're like, oh my God, I should have done this 20 years ago. That's like the
Right. Right.
best thing I could ever hear at the end of a session. Because we all need to talk about what we're from.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. And I grew up that same way. Growing up in the church, growing up black, everything's pray about it, give it to God, man up, stick it out. And I didn't, I need to get back into it, but I went to therapy in grad school because it was free. It was part of, your student activity fee. And rest in peace. And my cousin, he had committed suicide, and it kind of messed with me. So, I was like, let me go get this to try to talk to someone. And I ended up
You in
going
your
there
20s?
just. Yeah, this was for about 27. I'm gonna say, yeah, 20, no, 26 rather. Actually, was 24,
Wow.
25. Yeah, so I
That's a
went
hard one.
there. Yeah, and it was such so refreshing because I went there just for that, but then I ended up talking to her about everything else that was going on in life, and she was able to connect stuff to, you know, stuff that happened in the past and how that
It's
deals with my
all
view now.
connected. Isn't that what's
Yeah,
crazy? Everything's connected. That's my favorite part too. Like the session almost takes a, kind of a lane of its own.
right, right. And it felt so, like they always say, is that, granted, I'm close with my mom, my dad, my uncles, mentors, the whole nine, but you feel a little more open and vulnerable with someone that doesn't know you. And then someone that isn't, they're not going to have a judgmental thing about it. Like, for example, me and my mom are super close, but if I go to her with an issue, it's like her perspective of me is just still going to always be her baby at the end of the day. So,
Right, right, right.
yeah,
Without you don't want that bias. Yeah, it's kind of
right.
cool where you can go somewhere where you don't have to be fine. I tell people that all the time. That's what I try to do every time you come into my office is like you can take off the I'm fine kind of mask and just not be okay. And let's talk about why you're not okay.
Right, right. So I'm sure there are many different, avenues of it, not just getting people involved in it, but just as a professional and other therapists that may be listening or aspiring therapists, what are some of the challenges that you come across, working in therapy?
Well, let me tell you a few things that I've heard from people that come see me after being around or having a therapist that was kind of, what word can I use? Can I use the word whack? Yes,
Yeah,
we're gonna
yeah.
use the word whack. Whack, lame, boring, something. Like some there are some of my colleagues that I say out loud that I wouldn't even send my dog to. So that's a thing. Meaning that they are so maybe by the book that it feels like they're reading the book while they're talking to you and they're not relatable. And so I tell people, clinicians all the time, really work on continuing to keep your personality. If you, I mean, we don't need to be out here just crying and having like but you can actually just be human in the room. I think a lot of times with people that do what I do, we have to take care of ourselves, right? So I think that's what you're asking of just
Yeah.
how is it the challenge of being on the healing side of the profession. So I mean, there are a lot of people that need to know what triggers them. I tell people all the time that do my job. If you still have some things that are unprocessed, like sexual abuse from, and so that's not good. That means you are bleeding
Wow.
on the patients. So once again, get your own
Yeah.
therapist. There's nothing wrong with being a therapist that has a therapist. I know I have one. Now I always say I like to talk to males because males talk straight. I like direct communication, and so I like talking to male therapists. I have a female therapist as a couple in my relationship. I you know what I mean? Like I'm never exempt to hear somebody else's kind of like third party, non-biased, neutral response to maybe what I'm doing wrong. Because sometimes we can't see our own stuff. And so
Yeah.
to me, I think it's freeing to be the client or the patient on the couch. You're just like, oh, tell me what you see. Once you find one that fits and that you trust, you got to find one that fits so you can deepen your healing and your journey with therapy.
Right. Right, absolutely. And I'm sticking on that. I think I'm asking also too from my perspective, and also I have these conversations. There's a thing when we talk about males in therapy, specifically black males, and like I said, how we were raised, it used to be boys don't cry, man up, toughen up. And I think today, you do have people. I have friends that are, specifically my male friends that are now getting into therapy. They're opening up more. They're noticing that they need to heal some childhood trauma, but at the same time too, it's not even just black. I just think we talk about gender roles and we try to say non-gender. I think, females in society, nobody still wants a man that is displaying, and I don't want to use the word weakness, but for lack of better words, but displaying just being so soft, so this, so that. And I say that because, I have older women in my family where they'll say things like, literally, I remember a quote like, men don't try, men make it happen, or men go out and do this, men do that. And in the midst of it, you may see some men who die from old age, or you may see with black men, have stress levels and those type
Don't
levels.
see a
So
lot of big papas out here. They
yeah,
not
yeah, yeah. So it's like, how do we
older
get
women
into this?
would let them cry or just be freaking like human. And so
Yeah,
understand it. The elders got to unlearn some stuff. I say it out loud all the time. Like, some of y'all have taught us some things that I have to make. I have to make a big effort to take it out of my mindset.
right.
Automatic. It's unfortunate. We always wondering why there's. Go to a church right now. How many older men are sitting there?
Oh my God.
Right? How go to a wedding? Where are they? And
Even
because
if you go to the schools.
go to the schools, exactly. It just goes on and on. Go to the grocery store, and it's like black men do die early. And I wonder why. Because who is giving them room to speak about how they're doing? We're not. We doing all the daggone talking as women. See, nobody say about that stuff out loud. Nobody like to say this out loud. Dr. Tasha, you're a woman. How can you say this? I'm telling you, men literally come to me all the time, and their biggest complaint is that they. So
Yeah.
you literally telling me that yo dude, because you talking and interrupting him every time he's trying to share, come to me and spend $100, $200 an hour so that I can hear him when you could do it for free?
Right.
Sister, that can't
Yeah.
that can't be my problem. Yeah, and I know sometimes as a woman we get so excited that we interrupt y'all because we want to finish your sentence as if y'all can't put one together. It's so
Yeah.
disrespectful, but we were socialized to kind of talk over each other. It's crazy how women
Right.
talk. But men, y'all were taught to like listen and let the brother finish. And then you talk. It's kind of cool. I didn't learn that until I was like 33 years old. I'm literally in a jail and I'm watching young men that are in jail, wait for each other to finish talking. Even when they were upset, I'm like, oh my God,
Yeah.
even in jail? Yeah. But as women, we talking over each other all the time. And we really can hear and listen at the same time. We crazy. Jumping over
Right.
each other in the air. But to answer your question, yes, men need to be able to talk. A lot of times there's like a disease of the body when you literally hold on to too much and never let anything go and act like you're quote unquote fine all the daggone time when you're not. But nobody gives you room to have a problem. I have watched the way my grandmother treats me and the way grandmother treats my brother. I remember this at like 12 or 15 or 20. I would come in the room or my grandma's house and she'd ask me did I want a banana or some fruit. And then my brother walk in the room and it would be like, hey, can you fix blah 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 in the attic? And can you go down in the cellar and do this? And it was almost like, dang, we always looking to y'all to fix stuff, and do stuff. But very rarely are we really asking how you're doing. So that's that. I always say that's our fault.
Yeah, and I think it's so healthy to talk, and I think for me, I ask a lot because I'm lucky where since a kid, outside of my family, I've always kept a good group of older men. Like literally now my main chat is myself, two friends my age, and the two other guys. They're 43, 44, married for 10
Wow,
plus
that is
years.
so good.
Yeah, so we talk every day, we laugh, we joke, but it's like it's an open space. And I've noticed, I think through dating, through meeting new friends, like a lot of people really don't have anybody to talk to. And I think sometimes it's where you may see people on social media, maybe being over transparent or pouring their hearts out or, sharing stuff online that maybe shouldn't be shared online. But I had to learn that sometimes people just want to hear. That's all they want.
That's it. They don't want you to talk about yourself at all.
Right.
That's good. I love that you know that it's important. And down here I have a men's group in South Florida, which is crazy as a woman, but it's about 120 guys. It's called Jam Justifiably Alpha Men, and we talk.
Yeah. And that was actually about to lead into my next question, just talking about. So you're the president of the Association of Black Psychologists in South Florida. How long have you been in that leadership role?
Oh, so for 4 years I was the president, and I'm now the president elect. Me and the vice president, we just switched because we loved working with each other.
Oh, nice.
So yeah, I've been on the executive board probably for 8 years. But yes, I was the president for 4. And it's like a beautiful thing to be a part of the Association of Black Psychologists. You could only imagine how I think we're like of the field that's black, and so we don't get to sit around with each other and talk about the challenges, as you asked, as clinicians that are black in our own black communities.
Nice. Yeah, that's good. Now, I know your experiences range from LA, Philly, Chicago, Virginia, even in Japan and those different places, but specifically with South Florida. We all know. I tell people so. Once I relocated, I was like, when people say only certain things happen in Florida, it's actually true. Florida lives up to that
10
stereotype.
4 on that. Oh Lord, that's a
Yeah.
whole
So
nother podcast right there.
how has that been? Coming from Ann Arbor, being a Spelman, we talked about being, black progressive and those things. But those who may not know Florida's makeup, it's a lot of Latin people. It's a heavy Caribbean culture. How has it been? Really addressing mental health issues and therapy with people, but just dealing with like that mixing bowl of so many cultures. I'm sure every client can be totally different because it's just a place where it's like a melting pot.
How much time you got, sir? How much time you got?
And
First of all,
I know from just working in retail, dealing with the different
it's
cultures, I can only
deep. It's so
imagine.
deep. I'm like, where is this? Are we still in America?
Right.
That's the question. Like, dang, how are Black Americans at the bottom in South Florida? Like, I will literally be looked down upon. Like, oh, where you from? From? I always say this is the only place that people ask you where you from twice. Well, where you from? Oh, okay, I'm from
Right.
Michigan. Well, where your people from? Oh, they're from Philadelphia, North Carolina. Well, where are they from? I don't know. We were stolen 400 years ago. We don't
Right.
know where we're from. I think it's off of West Africa, maybe Ghana. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. We can pick a country, but we don't know. But down here, because so many people know where they were dropped off, because let's still call it what it is. They don't know which African country they're from either, but they do know that they were dropped off in Haiti, Jamaica, Nicaragua, right? Or Dominica. It's a blessing that you know. It's a blessing that you kept your culture. It's a blessing that you know your customs. It's a blessing that you maintained how you eat and how you speak in the patois. It's great, but do not you feel bad because we were beat and oppressed for so many years that we had to learn to speak the way you hear me speaking right now, sir
Right. Right.
and ma'am. Like at some point, it's like we have to prove ourselves as Black Americans in South Florida, and I can't stand it. I ain't never felt this in my entire life where people look down on me that look like
that
me. See, that's what
I'm
did
about to say
it.
that look
They
like
look
you.
like
Yeah.
me.
It
I'm like, when
yeah,
did you
it
get to
tripped
be
me
better
out.
than me? Because you know about the
Yeah.
curry goat and I'm learning. I don't get it. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like, what happened? And so once you learn what happened, it's a real historical thing about Black Americans treated West Indians and Caribbean folks very badly when they came over here. So they started to develop this kind of negativity towards us. and not realizing that now they feel a certain way towards us, anticipating that we think this way of them. And folks like you and I who didn't come from that, we're like, whoa, where's the salt from?
Yeah,
You
like what
know?
is going
But
on?
it's like
Like,
historical from the 80s and the 90s of basically Caribbean folks being treated badly. It's bad how they were treated from some Black Americans, but we're not all this way. And some people did it out of ignorance. And so we need some healing in our own community. So, but to answer your question, because I know you understand the Black relations, Black American relations, and the Caribbean
yeah,
relations down here, there are a lot of people that are of the Caribbean that are in my office. They're sometimes secretly in my office because they don't want anybody else to know. But a lot of people are here that literally are from a lot of different countries in the Caribbean. They always say that, you know, in a Haitian household you can never talk about how you feel. In a
yeah,
Jamaican household, that your mom or parents just want you to be happy that you're here and you can't complain about anything. You know what I mean? And so that becomes how and what keeps us silent even in our 40s and our 30s, because you were taught that your feelings don't matter from your household, where they basically were just saying, be grateful that we're here, and shut up, which
yeah,
is all historical as well. That's still oppression.
yeah. Absolutely. No, you
But we've
spot
gotten
on.
through it. It's a lot of folks that are here. We got NFL players
Yeah,
that talk about going to therapy. We got Charlemagne saying it every day on Breakfast Club, which
yep,
I appreciate. We got Love and Hip Hop that sometimes they'll have resident therapists, that, you know, where they really will yield to, like, what do you see and what's really happening when you're fighting on reality TV. And the truth is, I don't feel heard, or I need to be validated and they hurt my feelings, right? And so those things are becoming sexy, which I love. Mental health is going. It definitely is talked about more and more now.
absolutely. No, I agree. It's way more than I've ever heard about it. And then you also see people kind of being champions for who you may have never thought would be, a champion for it in that space.
It's so true.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely for sure. So before we close out, like I said, I know this for those listening, this is a quick warm up. We're gonna do a in person one
Oh
and dive
yes.
deeper. But I want to ask, just being in this field, working in therapy, and I know you mentioned something about not putting all the stuff on the clients, but outside of this, what do you do to really sustain a great work life balance where you listen to everyone's issues? I'm sure some stuff may sometimes emotionally get to you, but being booked up, being different speaking engagements, how does Dr. Tasha work to have that balance, between work and your personal life?
It's a good question. So remember when I said earlier that I do feel that I'm gifted for this? And
Yeah,
so when you're gifted for something, whatever that is, you could be an artist, right? A vocal artist, maybe even a visual artist. Or you could be you could be the bus driver and you could be the janitor. But whatever it is that you are passionate about, a lot of times you don't really tire easily. And I have to say that because I work 12 hours every day. You know what I mean?
yeah,
5 days a week. And so a lot of people are like, you do what, when? And so for me, those 12 hours go by so fast because I'm literally honored to be in their lives that they let me in, knowing that years ago, no one would be talking about this on a couch with clinician. Like, so I'm almost like, it's like a humbling experience for those 12 hours. Now, there are times that I hear the roughest things that one could hear that's in someone's real life. I always say some of the hardest things are to hear when, like, a young woman or a young man, when they talk about their childhood trauma and they were literally sexually abused by their parent, their biological parent. I'm talking about young men and their mothers doing certain things to them, and
yeah,
young women and their fathers doing something. And that one always gets me. You know what I mean? That always gets me there. I'm like, could you imagine the lens that you think of the world if your own parent, right, dismissed, your own emotional safety, or literally forgot that you were not their spouse and that you were not their peer and that their job was to nurture you and they didn't do that. So that one gets me a lot of times. But the interesting thing is, for me, just like when I work with drug addicts, so I work with somebody that's been struggling on crack for like 20, 30 years, and they'll
mm,
finally come into my office in their 50s. And for me, I'm like, we're talking about them struggling with the cocaine or the alcohol, knowing in my mind, I'm knowing that I'm not going to heal or cure, quote unquote, them in this 1 hour because they have been doing this for 30 years. So I tell people to
right,
let go of their Jesus or their God complex. Like, a lot of folks need to let that go.
yeah,
Like, you literally are not that powerful. And
right,
so when it comes to just being a vessel, it's like, just be happy that you're the vessel, but how they get there is their work. And so I literally lay down most things after work, even if it's 9 p.m., knowing I'm going to come back to the office at 9 a.m. I lay it down. I don't really feel it. I go home and have a cocktail and a nice glass of wine and
Yeah.
some wonderful crab legs, with some good butter. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I'm really not thinking about how hard their life is. I'm thinking about, oh, wow, I'm so, you know, just happy to have, the ability to work with them, be effective, and help get them there. I tell people that even when I work with batterers, that like, maybe men that beat women or women that beat men, because hello, that happens all the time. It's like, I'm here to help them hit their wives less. Or rapists. It's like, girl, you work with rapists? Yeah, I work with rapists. I work with murderers.
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm here to help you kill less people. I'm here to help you rape less little boys. You know what I'm saying? Like, some people don't want to talk to them because they're so judgmental, but you don't know what their life was like to get them here. And so for me, you have to really come with the pure heart to be able to do this work, and then leave it there at the office. Because if you don't, then you're going to start being as heavy as the patient. And like I said earlier, it's very, very unfortunate when the clinician or the healer or the pastor or folks in authority start bleeding on the people that need them. And it's because they're not dealing with their own hurt.
Yep, yep. No, absolutely right. Absolutely right. This is great. And I'm looking forward to us continuing this conversation in person. Definitely got a lot of knowledge that you could share. So I thank you. And I also too just want to say to the people listening, this is an example of multitasking. You're on your way to a speaking engagement, right?
Oh no, I just left
Oh,
one
you
and
just
I'm on
left.
the way to
Okay.
get something to eat. No, you're right.
Okay.
This is great, and I appreciate you keeping the time. See that,
For
even
sure.
that alone, as a progressive professional, it matters when another professional can tell that you are going to monitor and hold the boundary and the time. It's
Yeah,
like, this is when you want to continue to work with folks. Folks, we
absolutely.
gotta really remember what we're doing. It's like, you gotta maintain integrity in all that we do professionally. It really
Yeah.
matters. Networking, like you were talking earlier, is everything.
Yeah. No, I absolutely agree. So definitely appreciate your time, your insight, and your knowledge today on the show. Definitely let the guests know that's listening where to find you at on social media, your website, and all those good things.
Oh, I appreciate that, you sharing your
Yeah.
platform. I am on Instagram and Facebook. It is Doctora Tasha, at Doctora, doctor with an A, which is Spanish for doctor, Doctora, and then Tasha, Tasha, Doctora Tasha. And so either that or my website, if you want a session, it is www.drivebytherapy.org. When you reach out, I will not be able to see you for another 3 to 4 months. That's the norm.
Yep. Okay. Good.
Please,
Good.
please, please, please know that. But I look forward to talking to you whenever you do.
Absolutely, for sure, Dr. Tasha. So I definitely appreciate it. Again, to your time today. I'll be in touch. You enjoy the rest of your weekend, and keep on leading and keep fighting a good fight for us.
Oh, you too. I appreciate the interview. You are wonderful at this.
Thank you so much. So talk to you and see you soon.
Take care.
All
Bye.
right, bye bye. Thank you for tuning into Dreams by Any Means Motivation Station, where hustle plus faith equals success. Stay tuned for the next episode.